The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The People's View is a show sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. The committee meets every second Thursday at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to contact us, we have a website, nashuagop.org. And at the end of the show, you'll see some contact phone numbers or email addresses that you may want to send us your comments and recommendations. Thank you for listening in.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and today we have Representative Laurie Sanborn from Bedford. Laurie, you're on the Finance Committee, you're on chair of the Business Caucus, and what else are you doing?
I'm a business owner, so I have to run a business. Actually, I have 7 businesses, so very busy.
You must know how to use your time. So, but the business thing is what I want to focus on. You've been running this now for a couple of sessions.
Yeah, let me give you the background on that. Yeah. When I was first elected in 2010, I immediately looked around for a pro-business group of legislators to join because, you know, we all ran on a jobs and economy platform, and you can't be pro-jobs if you're not pro-business. So I looked around for that, and I was surprised that there was no group of pro-business representatives at the State House, and there never really had been, just focused on those issues. So I created the first ever House Business Coalition. And we're nonpartisan. We bring all representatives we can into the fold to mostly try to educate people on the impact of legislation on the small business community in particular, you know, for all businesses. But, you know, sometimes small businesses don't really have a lot of representation up at the State House. And, you know, they don't have lobbying groups and things like that. So we wanted to make sure we were taking that extra hard look at all the legislation that was coming through and make sure we weren't making it harder for them. And whenever possible, try to make it easier for businesses. So we've been around since January of 2011, and we have over 100 members. We meet regularly, and we look at all the bills as they come through the House and use that as one of the important filters in whether we should pass the bill or not. And then on session days, as you know, everyone hands out sheets of paper to try to get your attention and make a recommendation, and we make recommendations on the bills that have a direct business impact. And in doing so, try to educate members who might be very knowledgeable in education or like in your case, public works, or in other areas, but they really just don't, they've never run a business, maybe they don't really understand that, you know, when we increase a fee, when we increase some regulations or reporting requirements, what kind of really tough impact that has on a small business.
Well, I hope you've been effective. I know when I was there on the 2011-12 session, we did a lot of things that I hoped helped out on some of the
Absolutely.
small
You were
businesses.
a very important part of that. And, you know, it comes down, there's a lot of work in the House with 400 members, over 20 policy committees. There's a lot of detail to keep on top of. And so it was a total team approach. No one person can do this. So that's why you really need 100 members to be out there really watching, because you know how bills can change.
Oh, yeah.
They start one way, they can be amended in committee, they can morph over time, especially after the Senate starts working on them.
Sometimes they can just be reversed completely.
Right, exactly. So we have to keep an eagle eye on that to make sure that suddenly now something that was completely benign, now we're adding this extra requirement on it. And so that's what we do. We really try to make sure that we are passing good legislation. You know, and I think everyone goes there with the intent to pass good legislation, but there's all these things that we call, what, unintended consequences. You know that term. And we want to prevent that from happening. We want to make sure we really fully vet it. And so one of the things that the House Business Caucus does, we're known as a coalition or a caucus, and we reach out to business members all the time. So we have business roundtables all over the state, and we meet with business owners to find out how is it going. What are we doing right, and what do we need to work on? And in doing so, we have learned so many important things. And oftentimes, there's something very problematic that is a easy fix. That might be just 1 or 2 lines in a law that's on the books right now, but it's just really causing a lot of pain and expense for these businesses. And maybe we can fix it, and we have. And as you know, we've passed over 100 pro-business bills. They don't make the front of the headline news, right? They're not in the front of the papers. They're not usually very controversial. They are bipartisan, but we can fix those things. So let's do that. So we try to do that.
And I know we also helped out on the implementation. I think sometimes they were a little bit, naive about how to really communicate with their customers, which are the new businesses.
Right.
This is one of the things that was really surprising to me, because I thought that they were a little bit more sensitive to the needs of their people. But I think they're coming out with better education for people who are starting their own businesses or expanding their businesses.
Absolutely. There's a thing called the Business One Stop that we talked a lot about in our caucus, and it's now actually happening.
Is it? Has it really been initiated?
It has been initiated. I won't say it's perfect. It needs some work, but it is a start in the right direction, so that if you're going to start a company in New Hampshire, we're going to make it easier for you. You're going to be able to do more of it online. And you're going to be able to get a lot of your questions answered in that format. And for most business owners, you're multitasking to the hilt. And if you can look online while you're managing your staff and doing everything else you need to do, it's easier than sitting on hold waiting for someone at a state agency to pick up the phone and answer your questions. So, people can do it, on the couch when they get home from work, kind of thing. So that's really helped. And I think if we continue to modernize our state government, that's been a major focus of the House Business Caucus, is to modernize and streamline and make it easier. And we can do that. That's the kind of the low-hanging fruit. Let's just make it easier for businesses without even necessarily having to change the laws.
So how somebody wants to start a new business, where do they go on the website?
Well, on the website, I would have to, I don't remember the exact website. I will get that for you. Maybe we could do a follow-up, and I can provide a lot more information for you, because I don't have that off the top of my head. But as you know, probably when you start a business in New Hampshire, you have to go to the Secretary of State, and that's where you start the paperwork and go from there. And it's just made it more streamlined for you.
So would it be connected then with the Secretary of State's website, or not yet?
To the best of my knowledge, it is connected, but again, I would want to look at it again. I looked at it when it was actually in like a prototype form months ago, and I know it's gotten better from that, and I haven't started any new businesses myself yet. So.
Well, I'm sure it's good, but it's finally bringing the administration into the 21st century.
Yes, and that's what we need to do. So we've already done some things like just, and it's hard, it's sad to me that we have to pass some of this into law to make it happen, but sometimes that's the case. So to allow people to pay their taxes online with a credit card. Right. It seems kind of like a no-brainer, but those are the types of things that the government wasn't doing 5 years ago and now is doing.
Well, I heard we had in our committee, and I'm not sure why Public Works heard it, but I think it's because they put up a facility. The Justice Department has an e-court, and they've done what do you call it? I lost the words, for small claims court. On there, so you can do everything online. Right. And even though they have human people you can talk to, they found that they didn't need it. That most of the people, in fact, the example they used, they said there was only one person that couldn't use the computer to do all the work. And that guy was in prison.
Well, I'm going to put a little shameless plug for my parents who live in Nashua, and they're not computer savvy. And so we do still have to make sure we take care of our folks that just really can't use the computer. But most people, it's easier for them. So if we can make it easier for government, more affordable for government, and easier for the people, I think that's a win-win-win.
And they said they're saving like 9-10 positions there, which means that maybe we can balance the budget or something. Right, and then if we can move through these cases quicker, people can get back to living their lives or fix the situation, and we can move on. So I think that's important. It's also important for the business community is to get things resolved quickly. If there's something you need to comply with, you want to know what it is, you want to get access to the form, you want to be able to submit it.
Those, it seems so basic, but it's important to the business community.
Do you want people to send you some interesting comments on the businesses' problems that they see?
I do. The number one thing we hear from businesses, well, two things. Too much regulation, a lot of red tape that just bogs you down, and then costs. It's just really expensive to do business here. And those are the types of things I'd like to hear. Hopefully my email address will be up on the screen for people, because I'd love to hear from people personally, and then I can bring this to the committee, and then also we're going to be doing business roundtables. And I think we're going to call it the Red Tape Road Tour.
Oh, that's nice.
Something cute and say. So we're going to go out different regions all over the state and invite business owners to come and talk to us and tell us where we can improve. And if we can pass a law to fix it, we're going to try to do that. If it's simply connecting the dots between maybe a business owner and an agency at the state level, we're going to do that. Let's connect the dots for people. Let's make it easier. We need to compete. New Hampshire doesn't operate in a vacuum. We are competing with Maine and Massachusetts and Vermont and, honestly, the whole world. So we really need to be better because the rest of the world is getting better.
Well, as you say, there's a lot there. And if you can give me your schedule once you have this roundtable business going around. Do you have any idea how it's going to be run? I mean,
we've done this in the past, and so I have a general sense of what it's going to be. And I'll tell you, we're probably not going to kick off anything until what we call crossover. And I know you know what crossover is. So we have a real deadline ahead of us that all 800 plus bills in the House have to be dealt with in the House by the end of March. Actually, it's by April 2nd. And including the budget. April Fool's Day is when you're going to hear about the budget probably, which is funny. But yeah, April 2nd, we have to have everything that originated in the House, including a budget, done and moved off to the Senate. Now, the Senate has 237 bills. So, that's a piece of cake compared to what we're sending them. So, and I know because my husband's in the Senate, so I give them a hard time about this. So we'll have it, we'll be able to take a deep breath in early April. So that's when we're going to start this tour and try to listen to these businesses.
Wait for the warm weather. Maybe we'll have the snow melted by then.
I hope so. I hope so. It'll be easier to get around. So one of the things that we've always done in the past that has worked, but we're open to changing this based on the needs of a region and the community, and that is to do it before working hours on a weekday, because that's when businesses are gearing up, getting ready to go. Once they get to their businesses, it's hard to pull them back out. So usually we'll have this roundtable from 7:30 in the morning till 9 a.m. and be done sharp at 9 because people have to get to work. But that way we get the most people present. It's quick, it's professional, and we have a nice presentation. So usually the way we'll do it is we'll invite businesses to specifically bring their ideas. And the more specific they can be, the better. And this isn't supposed to be a complaint session, right? This is really to be as productive as possible so that it can turn into legislation.
You're looking for new suggestions, new innovations, or new ways of approaching things.
Absolutely. And, let me give you a quick example. And this came from Nashua. This came from BAE, which is a major employer in New Hampshire. And they brought to our attention that New Hampshire was very unique. It didn't allow companies to recycle spent materials. And they came to one of our business roundtables, and we kept digging, what can we do? What can we do? And there's a lot of big stuff, like, we need to reduce our business profits tax rates, our business enterprise tax rates. Those things came up, and we are working on that. We can talk about that in this show if you want. But they also said, there's this regulation that just doesn't make sense to us, and it makes New Hampshire non-competitive. And that was this bill. And really, it's a pro-recycling bill. Yeah. And it kind of, once we heard it, we thought, this is easy, right? We can fix this. And it was one line change in an RSA. It passed easily. It fixed a problem. And now, so the alcohol that they use to clean circuit boards can be reused afterward in another industry. So it's great.
Yeah, well, that's good. I've been in an industry that needed to do that too. And it's sometimes it's a little bit ridiculous how things go. Yeah.
And it's something we could fix, something we didn't know about, something we have to hear from the business owners to know what the problem is and need their expertise. And he came, the gentleman who spoke to us came and testified, and it worked. Yeah.
Well, you wanted to touch on the business tax. And
and that's a major issue for New Hampshire. Overall, we are ranked 7th in the nation in terms of being tax friendly. So that's a good thing. And that comes from not having a sales tax and not having a broad-based income tax. And those are good things. But when it comes to corporate taxes, we're 48th in the nation. And this is from the taxfoundation.org. They're a nonpartisan group that looks strictly at tax policy. And being ranked near the bottom is not a good thing. And when you look at the map and when you compare us to our neighbors, we're not competitive. Over 33 states in the last 2 years have made cuts to their taxes, particularly business taxes, and New Hampshire has not. So we look out of sorts. For us to be really competitive, we should be down about 6.5% on our business taxes, and we're much, much higher than that. So that's something we really need to look at, and we have 2 bills in the Senate right now, so they're originating there. SB 1 and SB 2 will look to, over time, reduce both the business profits tax and the business enterprise tax. And I think that'll be very important for us, again, to show the world that we're being business friendly again. You know, taxes aren't the only thing that a company looks at, but it's a big thing. It's a huge part of our expenses, and you have to consider that when you could literally just go over the border, in some cases just a few miles, and save money.
Well, Massachusetts had to reduce their tax.
They sure have, yeah, so they're more competitive than we are now.
What's their percentage? Do you have?
It's implemented over time, but now they're 8%, so they're less than us. And I think they go down to somewhere in the 7% range.
So and that's what the bill that's in SB 1 or SB 2 is doing, a somewhat similar type of reduction?
Yes, it will. I think SB 1 is dealing with the business profits tax. So we'll bring it down to 8%. There is a bit of a push to bring it down just a scooch below that because, perception is a big factor. And, 7.99 looks better than 8. So we'll see where that goes because, it's a long way from the end on that. And then SB 2 will incrementally reduce the percentage, the rate, on the business enterprise tax. And as you know, the business enterprise tax is a tax on payroll and interest and a few other things. But, so you're basically paying an income tax as a business owner on the payroll of your staff. And that can add up, especially when you're in a high-tech or high-tech manufacturing type of situation. That can add up a lot. And
with our regular budget problems, it's going to be even more difficult to get that passed.
It's always difficult. We're always, in New Hampshire, unlike the federal government, has to balance a budget. So we have to do it well and have it well thought out early on. We, as you know, Republicans being in control of the House will start first with realistic revenue assumptions. So we're going to really try to look out and figure out how much money do we think we're going to have. And then we're going to spend that and not a penny more.
Well, I heard it's only going to be somewhere like 2% or something like that, so that's not a big
Well,
increase.
We'll see. How is the economy doing? Some will say it's on fire, and others will say maybe not.
Well, and you can't really gamble on that too much.
Right.
I use the word because that's what they're looking at for raising their income, the gambling. Do you think that,
well,
from
that will
a
be
business
interesting.
standpoint, how does that fit?
It's interesting, because we've, since we've been in the House, we've seen lots of gambling bills. And this year, there's a lot less, just in the terms of number of gambling bills.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a surprise. But, again, we'll be debating that issue. From the House Business Coalition's perspective, we didn't take a strong position on that because we can see both sides of that argument. We are pro-business, and casino is a business entity, and we welcome that economic activity. On the other hand, when a bill will favor one business over other businesses, we tend to be very cautious. We prefer more of a free market approach. And we like to be careful about, if we pass this bill, it'll be great for this industry, but really hurt another industry, which is also a group of businesses. So that's our concern. Two things with the major casino bill was it was only going to be one casino. So that basically meant we were picking one successful business owner. Well, what about the rest? There's the folks at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudon. They would love to have a casino there. It makes sense for it to be there. So why would we, potentially limit it from other areas? So that's one of the concerns. And then some folks believe, whether you're the Verizon Wireless Center or you're the Capital Area Community Arts Center or the Palace Theater, that by having a large casino with a big entertainment venue, you're actually hurting maybe the rest of the state and other industries. So there's a lot of, back to the unintended consequences. So the Business Caucus took a no position stance on that. Generally, we will take a recommend or not recommend, but in that case, we were neutral because we can see both sides. And obviously, if you live in Salem and you want it there, we completely appreciate that. But not every part of the state welcomes that.
Well, I always was surprised that all the bills were specified that you can have this kind of gambling here and that kind over here. The free market was never really brought up. I mean, okay, you make your investment, you live or die on your own. So what if we have 10 of them in the state? And what if they're any place they want, if they're next door to each other?
That's up to them, right?
Care?
Right. Yeah, so we got a little overly controlling maybe on that. Yeah.
But I've never seen even anybody make that suggestion. And,
there was a lot of different bills, and some of them went about it a different way. So, we keep thinking about it as a big casino, but one of the big issues is these machines, slot machines, and so there were some bills that never really made the light of day that would have allowed slot machines basically in a lot of different places, like anyone that sold, I think, food and beverages. So it could be restaurants, could be anywhere, any entertainment facility could have these slot machines there. And so then like some people are concerned about proliferation. Well, right. So where do you draw the line? And what Governor Lynch always said was that's not part of the New Hampshire brand.
Right.
And what Governor Hassan did right from the get-go was to put it in her budget. And even members of her own party were concerned about that because it wasn't legal in our state, and here it was in the budget. So there's an air of trepidation, I think, in the House on how quickly we move on gambling. So we'll see where it goes.
As a part of the Business Caucus, do they work with the state in any way in developing a program to entice people to look at starting a business here?
We really don't have the time to do that at this time because we really have to focus on our primary job, which is in our committees and doing, legislation and voting. And so it's hard to do a lot more outreach than we already are. I would love to, but, it's just you have to focus on the job at hand. And you know how busy it is listening to the bills, attending public hearings, making sure you read every line, and then voting the right way. So there's a lot to it. And of course, we all have our constituent service to do, which is, following up on emails and going to all the local events and listening to folks. So it's hard to add a lot more to that. Although there is one thing that we've always done that we are going to do again, and that is a presidential series. The business community that oftentimes doesn't get overly involved in politics gets intrigued again when it's a presidential year. And that's right around the corner. It's amazing that it's next year, but it feels like it's already here because our first in the nation status means that all the presidential wannabes are coming to our state already, right? So the business community wants to talk to these folks. And what the Business Caucus does is bring those two together. So we will partner with some chambers of commerce. I hope we can do that with Nashua. And we will invite a presidential candidate on both sides of the aisle, if they're interested, to really talk to pro-business legislators in the House and Senate and business owners themselves. And these forums, again, are very focused on the economic issues. We try not to get too far off the rails on other topics, but business owners, have real questions on, what is the EPA doing and what's their viewpoint of that and how will they handle it and what's happening with healthcare. And these are major things that as much as we can do at the state level, there's a lot happening on the national side of things. And to have a presidential candidate right before you is a wonderful opportunity.
Certainly is. I was wondering, you're on the Finance Committee. Do you know if DRED is getting any increase in the budget?
It's too soon to tell. Okay. Where we are in the budget process, just to remind you, in the fall, the agencies put forth their budget requests. They put forth 18% increase, $1 billion increase. So that seems a bit high. Then the governor will come out with her budget, and her budget address will be on February 12th, so next week. And then it will come finally friendly to House Finance. It's hard for us to get started without the governor's version first.
Yet, yeah.
No, it's too soon to tell. So we'd like to see what ideas the governor has. We need to hear more details from the department themselves. And then, of course, we have to hear from Ways and Means, because it goes back to the question, how much money do we have to spend? So, and it's a tough job because we have to try to balance all these priorities. And obviously, economic development is very important. Underneath the DREAD umbrella is the parks, which is also very important to New Hampshire folks. So, those are all very important, but we have education issues, we have public works and transportation issues, we have a lot to worry about. So
but don't let them steal any more transportation money.
Okay, we're going to try to do that.
We need that for the roads. I mean, especially after this winter.
Oh boy, it's been tough, and we really
so.
appreciate all the efforts for the people who are doing public works in our towns and the state. It's been a tough winter on them. I think they're doing a great job.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and I happen to think that too. But the federal funds is really in desperate shape, and if they don't do something by May, we may have to lay off people by August.
Wow, that would be too bad.
Because that's how tight their budget is, and they're just trying to figure out where the money's coming for the future.
And it's tough, and I think most people though do believe that safe roads are a #1 priority and role of government. So you can question though some other things that government does and wonder, should that really be done by the private sector? And one of the things we are thinking about that other states have done is public-private partnerships, particularly with new roads or new off-ramps. Maybe that's something that we could partner on if we really just don't have enough public taxpayer money. Is there a private business who is interested in investing in that? Is there something we could do there? And some states have been very successful at that.
Well, I know there's a bill looking into selling turnpikes like they did in Indiana, but I use Indiana as an example because the company that bought them went bankrupt. So they have a problem.
There's the risk
with
there.
That. That's big risk.
Yeah.
So they're not sure what's going to happen with that. They sold the whole turnpike for I don't know how many $1 billion.
Wow. But when you look at the new rest areas on 93 as you head to Concord,
I think that's an excellent.
Those are wonderful, right?
Yeah.
One concern is that it's keeping people on the highway and isn't bringing them to your town, to your small businesses in your town. So that's the unfortunate part. On the other hand, it's just more convenient and folks are using it. And so now we have private businesses doing well, and we have a state business doing well there too.
Well, yeah, and it's doing so well that the people are already looking at the money it's generating. They're trying to put in a bill to do such and such, taking X percent of the meals and the tax from the liquor store, and using that to pay for what they want.
That's one of the risks. If anything does too well, there's suddenly money there.
That's what they're looking at right now. So.
Yep. We know that happens.
You're going to a lot on your plate, and good luck on that.
Thank you.
And I know you did a good job in the past, so I'm so sure you'll do it again.
Thank you.
And we'll have you back in April, and we'll talk about some of those roundtables.
I would love to do that.
Okay. Well,
thank you very
much, Laurie.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.